Hello, today is April 13th, and we're going to be reading our first reading for this coming Sunday, which is Easter Sunday. So, looking ahead, happy Easter to all of you. Um, we are in the midst of Holy Week, of course. Tomorrow is our Maundy Thursday service, and so that will be at 6 p.m. It will be a communion service. I hope you can join us for that. On Friday, we will have our Good Friday service at Gwinn United Methodist at 6 p.m. And our first reading for this, but today we are going to be reading our first reading for this Easter, which is Acts chapter 10, verses 34 through 43. Peter began to speak to the people. I truly understand that God shows no partiality, but in every nation, anyone who fears him and does what is right is acceptable to him. You know the message he sent to this people of Israel, preaching peace by Jesus Christ. He is Lord of all. That message spread throughout Judea, beginning in Galilee after the baptism that John announced. How God anointed Jesus of Nazareth with the Holy Spirit and with power, how he went about doing good and healing all who were oppressed by the devil, for God was with him. We are witnesses to all that he did both in Judea and in Jerusalem. They put him to death by hanging him on a tree. But God raised him on the third day and allowed him to appear, not to all the people but to us who were chosen by God as witnesses, and who ate and drank with him after he rose from the dead. He commanded us to preach to the people and to testify that he is the one ordained by God as judge of the living and the dead. All the prophets testify about him that everyone who believes in him receives forgiveness of sins through his name. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So this first reading that comes from Acts for Easter Sunday is Peter's sermon, is in some sense is the stump speech that Peter gives, with which he is basically pitching Jesus. He is telling, this is the story of the church. This is the story of Jesus at the center of the Gospels. All of the Gospels together, with all their varying versions of the story, with differently ordered events, with some parables included in some, and some miracles included in others. All of that together, and together with the prophets that precede them, Peter sums up in these 10 verses. And that's it. The whole message is here. And he starts the message with, I truly understand that God shows no partiality. Peter is preaching in this moment to the household of Cornelius. He is preaching to a Roman centurion. He's preaching not to the Jews, not to the people who expect Messiah, not to the people who have been raised in the law, not to the people who you might expect Jesus to have been called to liberate. No, rather, Peter is preaching in a Roman centurion's house, in the house of one who serves the Roman state, the occupiers, the ones who crucified Jesus. This is supposed to be Acts. The fact that this is one of the first conversions of a non-Jewish person, the fact that the first people to be welcomed into the new community of disciples is a Roman centurion and his family, that should be shocking. First, that they would be interested in this, in being part of the disciples, and second, that Peter and the rest are even open whatsoever to coming into this house, to preach what Jesus had taught them, and to baptize Cornelius and to baptize everyone in the house. Shocking, insane. But Peter, his preaching starts with, he finally understands, I truly understand that God shows no partiality. there should be a wall, or more rather, a chasm, a gulf between the disciples, the followers of Jesus, those who had been called to live into Torah, the Jewish law. There should be a gulf between them and this culturally Roman occupier. There is so much cultural difference, so much distance in their culture's priorities, values, expectations for the future, that this should not be a crossable gulf. And yet, the story of the church in the wake of the resurrection is of the Holy Spirit pushing the disciples to places they had not expected to go, pushing them specifically in every direction towards others, even those who previously had mistreated them, or who they would see as their enemies. In Peter, now the teaching of Jesus to love his enemies has been, that seed that has been planted has burst into beautiful blooming life by the Spirit. That he can confidently say that Jesus is Lord of all. That he was sent to the people of Israel, but his peace and his forgiveness of sins is for everyone. That the consequence of the resurrection is that we are not just witnesses to those within our group. We are not just witnesses to the people of Judea and Jerusalem. We're witnesses to all people. And moreover, and this is where it matters for us, because we can accept that. There is we don't encounter that cultural gulf the way that Peter and the first disciples did in those early days. But for us, it's not just about all people are welcome to the church. Instead, it is all people are valued and all people are forgiven by the same God. All people are being reached out to by God. All people are being actively sought out by the Holy Spirit. And the consequence of the resurrection means that our former fears and anxieties about reaching out to others in service and in love are gone. If you truly believe that Jesus Christ has conquered death itself, if you truly hold to the promise that not even death can contain the power of our God, then all other fears are set to the side. All other means of resisting evil have to be set to the side as well. We are not a people of violence, because violence is a tool that is not of our God. Our God is a God of healing. Our God is a God of resurrection. And if we believe that, then we can confidently befriend, help, aid our enemies, because there is nothing that can be done to us that God cannot and has not overcome. That's the promise of the resurrection. And in lives that are lived like that, in lives that can reach out with confident hope that God will make all things right in the end, with lives that are lived that say the impossible has already happened. And so I can live in search of impossible justice. I can live out impossible reconciliation. I can reach out and value the lives of those who I previously would consider dangerous or useless. I have been transformed by the confidence that God has conquered everything else, has knocked down all the obstacles between me and my neighbor and my enemy. This is what Peter is fired up by the Spirit. It is coming out everywhere. And in Peter's day, that's what happened. That's what happened to that early church. In a culture that was defined by resistance to the oppressor, Peter and the early disciples, animated by the Holy Spirit, inspired by the resurrection, confident in the resurrection for themselves, they turned instead not to armed resistance, but to transformative love. They turned to relationship with the oppressor and the oppressed, not to aid the oppressor, but to transform them toward the living out of love themselves. The Spirit is at work. And that Spirit that was alive and working through Peter and those first disciples, even in the house of a centurion, is alive and working through us. And that is our great hope and our great comfort in lives that are animated by anxiety and worry for the future. That we do not put our hope in anything other than the resurrection and the confidence that God has conquered death. And so what have we left to fear? That is our message of hope for today. I hope you're having a good week. I hope you can join us both for our Maundy Thursday service tomorrow and our Good Friday service, as well as Easter morning. Okay, hope you're having a good week. Stay safe, stay healthy. Bye-bye.